Hello everyone, Alistair Gold here. Do you know what? I was kind of originally planning to do this video on Monday night, and I just thought, there's so much I kind of want to get off my chest that I'm recording this really late at night. So you'll occasionally hear me kind of hush down a little bit when I feel I'm getting too loud because there's people in the house asleep. But I just thought, I even almost contemplated starting this by singing Hello Darkness, My Old Friend, because it kind of feels like that, doesn't it? Look, this is going to be one of those videos that's got, well, a little bit like Spurs. It's got highs and it's got lows. We're going to talk about a lot of the negatives that we saw against Ipswich. We're going to talk about some of the reasons it's probably not time to start panicking as of this moment, and also some kind of major changes I think that have to happen at Tottenham Hotspur. And that's kind of hopefully part of this overall process. But yeah, poor 61,500 people, other than the Ipswich fans that had to be inside that stadium today watching that mess of a performance. And what I think annoyed me more than anything is that we've been here before. This was a Tottenham performance that has been wheeled up, served up year after year. This is a pre-Postecoglou performance as well. We've seen this under Conte. We've seen it under Mourinho. We've seen it under Pochettino. We definitely saw it under Nuno. We've seen it under managers before that, where it's almost like we talk about Tottenham DNA. I kind of feel like performances like that are often ingrained in the Tottenham DNA, and we'll talk about that as well. Because let's be honest, give Spurs something to aim for. Give them a visiting opponent, let's say, that hasn't won a Premier League game in 22 years. And they'll say, oh, it's a lovely gift, thank you very much, and then slap it out of their hand. Because, as the old cliche goes, Dr. Tottenham will see you now. It's just... Only Spurs can go into an international break in 10th place in the table when a win at home against a team that started the day in the bottom three would have put them third in the table. They're 10th. It's just such a ridiculous... We're going to talk about the table as well and how ridiculous the table is right now. But the problem is with Tottenham is they see that as a team in the bottom three. They don't realise that in the Premier League, you have to play against a team in the bottom three as if you're playing a team in the top three. There should be no difference in your intensity, your conviction, as Postecoglou calls it. There should be no difference in your attitude towards the game whatsoever. It's just madness. It's absolute madness that it continues to happen. Just Spurs have got this ability. If someone opens a door for them to go through to something wonderful, they'll go, ugh, and they'll kick that door shut. They fear it. They will kick it shut with all their mediocre might. You can tell I'm annoyed at this one. This maybe wasn't the best idea to do a video on the same evening. Technically, we're about to be in the next day. It's that late I'm recording this, so maybe that counts. I mean, Postecoglou called the performance against Ipswich mediocre. It wasn't mediocre, but he called it unacceptable. And let's be honest, the reason I said mediocre is because kind of 10th place is a position that entirely fits the form of Tottenham Hotspur right now. This win-loss pattern that has dogged them. That might sound familiar to you when I'm saying win-loss. Does it ring any bells? Because it rings those bells for me straight away, because it's exactly what used to happen under Antonio Conte. I used to get sick of talking about win-loss. His teams, and stop me if this sounds all very familiar, had poor first halves. They would concede goals in the first half, but then they would fight back, sometimes fantastically and excitingly. But sometimes that, difficulty in trying to come back from a deficit proved too much for them. If anything, the consistency was remarkably consistent in this win-loss. What I find incredibly consistent and very frustrating right now is Spurs' current insistence on leaving us all in these international breaks with 2 weeks of misery to stew upon. Apparently, there's differing feelings on this. So I've seen a lot of people say it's the 5th occasion before an international break that Spurs have lost in a row. I think someone else told me it was 7, but the most I've seen most people say it's 5. 5 in a row. That is cruelty on a ridiculous level. That is cruelty to not only supporters, but cruelty towards me, who then has to write for 2 weeks about a very, very kind of negative version of Tottenham and how everyone feels about it. So yeah, I am doing a woe is me. I shouldn't, because quite frankly, I'm getting paid to go and watch that. Yeah, no, that's a bad thing. I was about to try and say, is that a worse thing? But absolutely it's not, because you poor people are having to pay to go and watch that. Yeah, oh, it's so annoying. It's so annoying. You do feel like in that press conference afterwards, Postecoglou looked like a man who's like, okay, I get it, what Tottenham Hotspur life is like. He was trying to take the blame for the display, well, the blame for the inconsistency on his own shoulders. I've got the quote for you, what he said. He said, "That's down to me. That's my responsibility. The inconsistency we're having this year, ultimately it comes down to me and my approach, and something I need to try and fix and see if I can help the players in that area." He told me about the game. We didn't start the game well at all. It was all sort of passive, without the ball, with the ball. I felt we didn't get the tempo right or intensity right. And then we gave ourselves a mountain to climb. The second half, we were in the ascendancy and had opportunities, obviously, but we didn't do enough with them. Look, Postecoglou, I kind of felt, was taking the hit for the players this time. I would imagine privately he would have been saying slightly different things to them. There's definitely, there's aspects of what that things that are definitely his responsibility, and I agree with that. But I do feel like against Ipswich, he put out a good enough team to do the job by a long shot. On paper, that is a side in the bottom three without a win to their name. That team should be showing exactly what they're about, Tottenham, and winning that game. They should. It just feels like, I don't know whether it's the younger aspect or whether the leaders aren't leading well enough and instilling this into the players, but there's this feeling that victory is just like a given, that it should just happen. It's Ipswich. We've beaten Villa, City, United, whatever, over recent weeks. We should be going into these games and just winning. How do they not learn from Palace? How do they not learn from going to Crystal Palace, who had not won a game this season, and think, we can't do that again? Maybe it's because it was at home, and they thought, we're at home. We win a lot at home. It's so frustrating. It really was frustrating. It's up there with the most frustrating ones of the Postecoglou era for me, because there's no reason why it should have happened. And this is the thing that Postecoglou's often said. You might have heard him say this a fair few times. He wants the players to believe in his football, and he wants them to kind of use it as their vessel to play their certain game, to put their creativity into, whatever. But he also makes it very clear to them that the football alone does not win you matches. It's going to help you, but it doesn't win you matches. You have to work relentlessly within this system to make it work, because it is a system that puts a lot of pressure on various points in the team. It will create opportunities for you, and we'll talk about that later, and lots of chances that Spurs have created over this season, but you also have to work incredibly hard to make sure it works at both ends of the pitch and that you take advantage of these chances. Because if you don't compete, you're going to have days like we had against Ipswich. You're going to have days like we had at Selhurst Park. You're going to have days like we had in the second half at the Amex, where Spurs, again, just thought it was a given. We're winning this game. We're well ahead. We're 2-0 up. Yes, we've got this. And we saw what happened next. And the trouble with this defeat, and this is something I said sat next to George Session from PA, and I said before the game started, they've got to win this game, because otherwise it makes the 7 changes at Galatasaray utterly redundant. And now they are, because they lost both games. Look, what I will give to Postecoglou definitely in this situation, and I've seen, this is the one thing I don't agree with so much that there's 2 things. One thing is the insistence people have with that he should be shouting and raging and jumping around his touchline. 2 things about that. First off, he does shout a lot. We see him do it. He's just below us. We see him shout a lot. Secondly, Spurs' previous full-time manager was a man who would leap around his touchline, bellowing, shouting, screaming, throwing himself around as if he was playing the game. It did nothing. Antonio Conte was one of the biggest shouters I've ever seen in a touchline. It did nothing for Tottenham. I think it's like a visual help for people. I think people need to see that. But then I remember towards the end of the Conte era, people would be saying that, he's just leaping around like a madman. He's got no control of what's happening. And it's like, you can't kind of have both. I don't see that one's as much. And he does shout. He does. The other thing that was levelled at Postecoglou yesterday was that he didn't make changes quick enough. He didn't do this. We spoke about this before, where often when he makes quicker changes, they're kind of not taken into account. And then when he doesn't, they are. What I kind of felt yesterday is yesterday. Yes, it is yesterday now. It will be yesterday for you because this is going to go up early in the morning. Hopefully, if it uploads. Even YouTube might just be so upset they might not upload it. I kind of feel like Postecoglou's options were very limited with his bench. I feel if he had a full squad to pick from, you've got the battling Richarlison to bring on. You've got a speedy Odegaard to bring on. You've even got the youthful fearlessness of Mikey Moore to bring on. Because he needed to change not only the fortunes of the front third, but I thought the attitude as well of some of the players that were attacking there. And that's not just to say that they weren't giving their all or they were overconfident or whatever. It's also to say that just sometimes a fresh mind or fresh leg and fresh ideas do these things. But he didn't have any of those players. He had Timo Werner, who I can only assume is carrying the groin injury still, because he wasn't meant to be available for this game. And lo and behold, he was on the bench. And I do wonder whether the groin injury he's been carrying that kind of disappeared in that amount of time. Maybe you just thought, I'll play with it. Then we've got 2 weeks off. That sounds weird. Groin and he's playing with it. You know what I mean? Playing through it. And the other play he had was James Maddison, who, let's be honest, has been out of form. And probably the same people, myself included, criticising James Maddison's previous games were probably during the game calling for him to come on. Like I say, myself included, I was wondering if when he was going to come on. That's my issue with yes, he could have changed it earlier. He could have done. Probably we're not going to bring on Basuma earlier than he did. Maddison, maybe. It would depend who for. I actually thought Sarr was playing quite well. Kulusevski's a difficult one because I don't know if you take off Kulusevski, even though he didn't have his greatest game, which we'll talk about in a bit, because of the threat he can still bring. And I kind of feel like Johnson and Son are a little bit similar in that even when they're not contributing as much as you want, they can come up in big moments. So yeah, I kind of understood it, and it felt like in the second half there was a bit of a head of steam, of momentum going, especially when they scored. So yeah, I'm not as fixated on that. I feel more like the players were just pants. But yeah, I mean, the thing mainly about the Postecoglou system, which is maybe the biggest area of the kind of letdown, is that we've said this before. In its ideal shape, when he's got the squad he kind of truly believes in, or fit and available, he makes a raft of changes around the hour mark, 2 or 3 changes. And what that does is it injects fresh legs into key positions and you don't drop the quality levels. When he can't do that, I kind of feel it's quite noticeable that the team starts to kind of run out of ideas almost. And look, it's not to excuse Postecoglou at all. Taking the hit for the player's performance, I think he's kind of right, because it is down to him to find a solution, regardless of the options he's got, because it's always the way in football. Players aren't the ones looked at. The person that is looked at is the manager. At Tottenham especially, the manager or head coach is the man that the finger of fate is pointing towards always. Spurs went into this game Premier League top scorers. Only 3 sides have conceded fewer goals than them as well. They remain the former. They're still the Premier League's top scorers. They would have been joint top scorers, but obviously they scored the goal through Rodrigo Bentancur, so they're still the top scorers. But the latter, the goals conceded, there are now 5 sides that have conceded fewer than them. Look, They allowed Kieran McKenna to claim his first top flight win at the club that he started his playing and coaching career at. Fair play to him, former Spurs guy. I think he shares an agent with Ange Postecoglou because they're all, there's a box behind us which I think is the base box, and I could see their shared agent very happily kind of putting his thumb up and everything towards him. It was a bit weird when your two managers are kind of facing off against each other. But yeah, back to Spurs and their various stats and things. So they got a plus 10 goal difference, yet they're 10th. It's the second best goal difference behind Liverpool this season. The fact that they're 10th says everything about the unpredictability of their performances this season. It's Monday now. Sunday's performance brought more daft errors in their own box. The worry I have with the defending, I probably don't worry about it as much as everyone else does. I know people worry about the players that get in down the flanks and everything, but I do feel like that's taken into account the way. We'll talk about that all later. There's various stats that kind of show how few shots on goal Spurs actually allow in games. But my concern mainly with defending is the amount of goals that are being scored in that little kind of sector on the right-hand side. I suppose left-hand side, if you're looking at it as an attacking player, of the Spurs kind of 6-yard box inside the box. The area essentially that lies between Pedro Porro and Christian Romero, if we're using the team against Ipswich. It just feels like they concede too many goals from that position. That may well be a question for Postecoglou at the next press conference, but I would say Brennan Johnson had a part to play as well in the first goal that they conceded. The ball kind of bounced up into the air, and he looked like he was going to go up and try and use his foot, try and hook it away, then thought, I can't do that, because Sammy Schmodix, that's how you pronounce it, was there, and he thought, maybe I'm going to whack him. Go for the header. I just kind of feel like it wasn't his first thought to go with his head with a ball that was in the air and very winnable for him as a header. And he kind of almost thought, I don't want to kick him. And that just allowed the Ipswich man to have all the time in the world to just hit this overhead kick, which is a good contact, but just went low into the bottom right corner. Second goal was probably even more of a gift. Spurs had a break up the other end of the pitch. I trying to remember who it was. Maybe Sonny played a ball across and no one could get on the end of it. Ipswich swept away straight up the pitch. Romero, I don't know whether he was trying to play offside or not, but he was well out of position. Whether it was an offside or whether he was trying to support the attack, I don't know. But he was so far out of position. Schmodix, I don't know, I'm probably killing the pronunciation of that. A Schmodix, it sounds like a Sean Connery thing. He just ran into that space, ran in behind Porro. The ball was played to him, hits this low cross. Vicario palms it out into his 6-yard box, something that he was used to be kind of criticised for in Serie A, Vicario, which was saving shots or pushing crosses into 6-yard box occasionally. He did that. Unfortunate for Radu Dragusin, hits him, rolls back straight towards the goal line, and there Liam Delap is there to smash it in. Just this kind of comedy in errors that none of us or Spurs fans were laughing at. It was just rubbish. So Spurs thought they'd got to go back. Dominic Solanke, who went down with quite a worrying-looking kind of knee injury. I asked Postecoglou after the game about him and Sarr. Sarr had a couple of big knocks, one in the first half, one in the second. Actually, when Sarr went off, he just essentially laid on the far side of the pitch, and they had to kind of go around and treat him there, and he had this slow walk round. He seemed to be fine, Postecoglou, about Sarr, and said it was just a knock and it didn't look serious. With Solanke, he said, we'll kind of have to see. He played on. It was like a jarred knee, I think he called it. He looked, I would say he was grimacing a lot in the first half. We could see his face up close on the monitors as well. Second half, I actually felt he was moving quite well. So he had this shot in the second half, which was really unfortunate. He kind of hooks it home, and his arm is around or near the defender's knee. And as the defender kind of moves, he pushes Solanke's arm up, and it hits his arm and goes in. The rule says, accidental or not, if it hits your arm, it's ruled out. It's so unfortunate, isn't it? That if the other player moves your arm, it's still technically a handball. That was ruled out. Spurs did get a goal back, of course, 69 minutes. Pedro Porro hits a corner, Bentancur does a really nice run, gets free and heads it home. And it kind of felt like, okay, here we go. We're doing it again. We're doing the Spurs thing where they get themselves behind, but they're going to find a way back. And they didn't. They didn't find a way back this time. They kind of huffed and puffed, and yeah, that's the trouble, isn't it? If you can make yourself, if there's a hill to climb, you can probably get over it. But if you leave yourself a mountain to climb, it's either going to take you a long time, more so than the 90 minutes will allow. And yeah, I mean, one of the positives, if I'm going to start with one positive with the players, was Bentancur. He started to tire a little bit after the goal, and he got very frustrated with a challenge that was given as a foul and a yellow card against him. And I kind of felt like from that point on, he lost his way a little bit. You could maybe argue in the build-up to the second goal that I think he went in for a challenge that wasn't great and didn't really win the ball. But other than that, I kind of felt he was playing quite well, and he got his goal, which is his first goal of the season. There is a certain irony to the fact that I feel like, I don't know if you agree or not, that we're getting the pre-cruciate ligament version of Rodrigo Bentancur, which is great, but the irony is we've got this potential ban hanging over his head as we wait to kind of find out. It could just be dropped at any time, this decision. I think it'll be from an independent commission, won't it? And we'll just find out at some point. And it'll probably come at the most annoying time when there's no real Europa League game, so he's not at least playing in that competition. Because that's the way around it, of course, is to play Basuma in the Premier League and Bentancur in the Europa League. But you just know it's going to come at a time when the Europa League games drop off or anything. But there is actually also another thing that keep an eye on. He's on 4 yellow cards now, so 1 more yellow card, and you can be adding another game on any potential ban if he does get one. And actually, on that note, keep an eye on Mickey van der Ven. Mickey van der Ven is also on 4 yellow cards. So when he returns, if he gets a yellow card in that first game back, he's out for the next one. We're not entirely sure when Mickey van der Ven is going to come back. Postu was a little bit reticent to say. He said after the international break, and whether it is straight after the international break or a little while after, we'll see. But yeah, so your stats for the day: Spurs 66% of the ball. 552 passes to Ipswich's 278. They had 17 shots on goal to Ipswich's 8. Vicario only had 1 save to make compared to Murich's 5. But Ipswich kept them at bay. 33 clearances, 3 blocks. Even in the final moment, Solanke went through, but was denied by Murich's legs. It's a tight angle, but just the edge of the 6-yard box. There were some questions over whether he could have squared it. I think it was Sonny. I think that would have been very difficult. I watched it back and kind of wondered, could he have done it? I think it probably wouldn't have got through to Sonny. I think it's one of those where the striker probably 9 times out of 10 or 99 times out of 100 has the shot. It's just unfortunate. It's one of those that could have gone through the keeper's legs, but the keeper saved it. So Sonny spoke after the game. He did one of his, unfortunately, all too familiar apologies that he's had to do since becoming captain. He said, it was a very disappointing afternoon, the result, but also the performance. We have to be better because we missed an opportunity to go ahead. We made the game a difficult situation by ourselves, which is very disappointing. Before they scored, we had a couple of chances from which we could have scored the goal to go ahead, but we didn't, and we conceded 2 very silly goals, which is also very painful. We know how important it is inside the box to defend our goal like it's our home. We didn't. We all have to take responsibility, and I'd like to say sorry about the result. Tottenham players tried to walk around and apologise, I think, to the fans and applaud them. From what I understand for some people who was in the South Stand, that Porro got a little bit of anger from the South Stand when he tried. Frustrated fans, you can kind of understand why people are frustrated. But yeah, I think they kind of let their feelings be known to him, which maybe surprised him a little bit. Like I said, that's from people in the South Stand. I wasn't there myself, I didn't see it. I've seen a video of Postu getting similar as he walked down the tunnel and the coaching staff. To be honest, very few players came out of the game with any credit. Dragishin had another shaky one, especially first half. He had this, it kind of didn't set the tone very well for himself. He had this header that he kind of span out to the touch line and then it didn't go out, and he was beaten by the winger. And he was kind of lucky that Vicario made a save from that with his legs. It was quite early on. And technically, if you look at his positioning for the first goal, he's drawn out very far across trying to cover through a doggy. And that brings a whole back four over and probably gives that space to Zmodics. I don't know where I got Schmodics from, where I went Sean Connery on it. He did get better, Dragoshin. I mean, again, I've got to remember he's 22 years old. He did get better as the game wore on, and his stats were probably the best among the defence. 6 clearances, 1 tackle, 1 interception, blocked 1 shot. His passing's still a work in progress. Saw that at times as well. I kind of feel like he's better when Spurs are under siege. He's better against a kind of a strong team. And he's good at getting in last-ditch tackles, clearances. He made 1 really good interception in his box not long after, funny enough, when he messed up that header and allowed a chance. He did a good sliding interception in his box. I think if you're on the front foot and trying to open up a side, which is the aim for Postecoglou's side quite a bit, he maybe looks a little bit more leaden-footed, and that's where Van de Ven comes in with his pace, his ability to drive forward with the ball, and also his quick passing as well. So I think it's kind of tough to criticise Dragoshin for the second goal. You could maybe say, could he have had better reflexes? Could he have shaped his body a little bit better? But I just feel like if Vicario's palming that straight against you and you're not expecting it, it's very difficult to react that quickly. Porro provided 4 key passes. I looked that up. There's more than anyone else on the team. We got the assist for Bentancur, but I just felt still a bit suspect defensively, and both goals you kind of could question maybe his involvement in them. Destiny Udogie I thought was good going forward, lots of work and link-up play. My feeling with Destiny Udogie is something he does at times which frustrates me a bit. And it could just be over-analysing this, but I feel there's quite a few 50-50 opportunities where he doesn't put himself into it strongly. He kind of waits for the bounce, and he waits to see what happens with the player on the ball. And those moments of hesitation in the Premier League at the top level, you can be done for. The player can get past you. And I felt there were a few moments where he was struggling with the players he was up against because he wasn't being aggressive in the way he defended. It may be that that's a byproduct of the sending off against Chelsea last season. Maybe he's too cautious now. I don't know. But yeah, I just feel I want him to put himself about a little bit more. Cue him doing that in the next match and getting himself sent off or something. We spoke about Sarr coming off. I actually felt Sarr had been reasonably decent. I thought he was quite mobile, made a few good interceptions. But yeah, they did keep whacking him. The other thing about Ipswich were doing, which was of course very frustrating for anyone connected with Spurs, was the time wasting. There's a lot of almost, Postecoglou said afterwards, it feels like set moments when players go down. And take a little bit of time to just disrupt the game and the rhythm. And it is a thing that teams are doing against Tottenham. They know that Spurs like to get this rhythm up and this relentlessness and keep going. And whenever the game breaks up, Spurs look less effective. And it kind of felt like this was what was happening. Ipswich players were going down. There were a few of them you could see were genuine injuries, but definitely lots of moments of treatment for them. And it did mess the game up. And he was kind of very much saying that, look, probably not why Spurs lost the game, but it is a frustrating element of Premier League football, which is not kind of what he thought Premier League football was about. Decky, he's had a brilliant season, but this was not up there with his best games at all. 3 key passes, but nowhere near the normal levels we've seen him at. Brennan Johnson, big early chance. He touched wide a lovely Sonny ball into the box that he just touched it wide. If anything, he kind of got too good a contact where if he hit a glancing touch onto it, it probably would have gone in. Didn't kind of make too much of an impact after that, Brennan Johnson. He cramped up towards the end. I do feel like he's been overworked a fair bit over the weeks. I know he only played a half in Thursday night, but I just feel like him, I could be wrong, and I should have probably looked this up. I kind of feel like he's played more minutes than most over the last month or so. And he did cramp up a bit. I saw him kind of asking for like an energy, I think it's an energy gel he's got rather than a drink. Sonny kind of was in and out of the game. He was quite creative. 2 key passes, 2 dribbles, 4 shots, 2 accurate crosses, 2 accurate long balls. A couple of moments where it was kind of the old Sonny and cutting inside and curling shots. But yeah, even he couldn't find a way through. But like I said, could have had an assist early on. Johnson put that away. Timo Werner came off the bench. He was quite direct, to be fair to him. There was one nice moment where he went on a run and forced the keeper into a flying save, tipped it over the bar. There was another moment, which was unfortunately probably from the catalogue of Werner, where got the ball to Sonny. Sonny picked him back out on the edge of the box, and he just skied his shot into the stratosphere. And we know that's kind of, unfortunately, in his wheelhouse. Maddison, he didn't really offer much when he came on. 9 minutes in the 15 minutes or so. Sorry, 9 passes in the 15 minutes or so that he was on the pitch, if you include the 8 minutes of added time. I would have no doubt that he'll believe he should have had longer in the game to influence it, but his recent performances, the free kick aside, and obviously against Villa, it's not exactly demanded that he should have it. Postecoglou, the way he spoke before the game about Maddison, he was asking about should Maddison be in the England squad, and he said something along the lines of, "Yeah, I don't think scoring a free kick gets you in the England squad," and it was very much as if to say his performances haven't really been good enough. And he hasn't been good enough to get him in the starting lineup for Spurs either. And even when he has been in Europe, not so great. So, yeah, if he'd had more time on the pitch, could he have changed things? Don't know. But certainly the evidence of recent weeks has not suggested that would have been the case. But it's just a really bland performance all round. Sonny, after the game, he kind of seems to suggest that he felt the players had come away from the structure and the plan that Postecoglou had for them for the game. He said, you've got to believe even more because we could be a bright team, as in believe even more in the Postecoglou way, because we could be a bright team, a really strong team. You can see it and everyone's seen it. In these type of games, you've got to think in a really mentally strong way because teams like Villa, you've got to go really strong. And then next game you go against Ipswich and it's the same opponent, the same competition. And everyone is expecting we win the game, but in football you never get a free win. You have to earn it and work hard. We've got to believe more and then we have to be more disciplined, that's for sure. Everybody has to be disciplined with the structure and the plan. You've got to just follow it. I think this is the main part of our strength and we can make it even stronger. And I hope we can be stronger when we come back for the international break. But yeah, another international break. Mired in misery. It is really frustrating though, isn't it? Like, and this is not to single anyone out, it's purely because it's the only person I've seen just as I was about to do this video on the on his Instagram account. Romero was like, there was photos he was sharing. I think Lisandro Martinez did a photo of them on the plane going to Argentina duty, and Romero like shared it and said some little things, "Good to see you, big head," or something like that. And you kind of think like, oh, just don't, just don't. You're kind of already escaping from this pain and misery and enjoying yourself with your friends going off to Argentina. I don't know. I just think there's this sometimes a lack of awareness from footballers. They do live in a bit of a bubble that kind of the consequences of kind of what they leave behind in their wake sometimes for the fans. And again, that's not to single out Romero. I haven't seen anyone that's tweeted. I mean, I could have a little look while I'm right here, but I haven't seen anyone that's put out anything on the game, apologies or anything like that. I'm just looking now. Just one of those things. I don't want to say something and absolutely hammer people for no reason. Wait a minute. Romero did put a post. He said, "Okay, no, to be fair, see, I'm glad I looked. Romero did put a post up before he did those. He said, beautiful to go out for the first time with you. It looks like his son was the mascot with him. So thanks for the fans for respect always and always be there. Today we wasted another opportunity, a moment that we'll overcome and come back stronger altogether." All right, fair play. I'm going to take that back. And actually, Pedro Porro has as well. As a team, we have to take accountability for these results. We must come together to be better and now look forward to coming back stronger after the break. The effort you put into supporting us must be reflected in our effort on the pitch, and it's something we'll never take for granted. See you after the break. Okay, there you go. I'm really glad I looked because that's a good message, actually. Porro has been a little bit in the news recently because you might not be aware that he is donating part of his wages to the help the people in Valencia after the awful stuff that's happened there with the rain, and was it like 200 people have died, like another 80 or so missing, and he's donated his wages, and Postecoglou said about him that, that's kind of the guy he is, and behind the scenes, he's very good with young players and everything. I'm just having a quick check down to see whether anyone else has thus far commented. It looks like it's just those two at the moment, going down the list of Spurs players that I have here. Yeah, okay, we'll stick with that for now. But I'm glad I looked, because, that's the whole point. I didn't want to single out Romero, and I'm glad I didn't. It is frustrating, though, that kind of they can escape from this on their international break, and we cannot. We're stuck in it, whether it is living in the moment until it changes next time, hopefully changes, or whether we have to write about it for a couple of weeks. It does show the fine margins, of course, in football, this result. As I said, Spurs win this game. Everything suddenly has a much better look to it. They're sitting in the top three, nestled above Chelsea and Arsenal. They're taking their place in the quarterfinals of the League Cup. Strong position in Europa League. 3 wins from the first 4 matches at the halfway stage of that big group phase. Which, all of that does sound wonderful. It sounds lovely. It sounds ideal. It's crazy what one game, how that can twist that entirely. Suddenly you're 10th, and it's like, the mid-table team. Whereas one win, and they would have been 3rd in the quarterfinals and in a strong position in Europa League. It's just mad how fine margins there are in football. 2 moments of poor defending, essentially, and that's caused that. And some stuttering attacking play as well. It's just crazy how tight that table is, though. 3 points separate 3rd and 11th. That's just a mad table right now. It really is. So it's one of those. Look, I've seen social media frustrations. I've seen people calling for Postecoglou's head. I know that they're there anyway, and of course, after a game like this, it kind of intensifies. Even if Spurs have won, 9 of the past 13 matches, including wins against Villa and City, whether you want to accept that one or not. United, whether you want to accept that away win or not as well. But it is still 9 wins from 13. Because look, the frustration at certain results is understandable. I do feel like that. There's far too much inconsistency in the performances, which there's too many excellent periods of games rather than excellent entire complete displays. Absolutely agree with that. The win-loss nature of the Premier League results is not good enough. Only 1 set of back-to-back wins in the Premier League this season so far. And of course, the away results are not good enough either. The performances haven't always reflected what the end result is. Palace apart and the second half at Brighton. But still, the results are there on paper. They're the important thing. Absolutely. And it's all something that Postecoglou has to fix. He does. There's plenty still to tweak for him. A lot still to tweak for him if it's going to be anywhere near what he wants to be. And that includes the attitude of the players as well. And if he's not getting a correct attitude from the players, he has to replace them. What I would say, and this is what I said at the top of this video, that this wasn't all going to be doom and gloom and things like that. I do still genuinely believe that the fixes are more minor than they are major in terms of his style of football and things like that. Because I was looking up some of the stuff, some of the various elements of it, especially in a league where I've just kind of said so few teams other than Liverpool are finding consistency. You've just got to fix something a little bit, I think, and bang, you can get on a run yourself. Because Spurs are the Premier League's top scorers. We said that, 23 goals. They've recorded the second most shots on goal per game this season. 17.2 shots on goal is their average per game. Second most off target as well, 6.3. And actually, they've missed the joint third highest number of big chances, 24 across the season so far. So they are creating. They're creating opportunities. They're just not taking enough of them, even though they're the Premier League's top scorers. That's one end of the pitch. Actually, continuing that end of the pitch, they've got the second highest XG in the Premier League with 20.28. But at the other end of the pitch, as I said earlier, alluded to, they've allowed the second fewest amount of shots per game in the competition, 7.8 per game. I think it might be only City that have conceded as few shots on goal. And of course, they've only still conceded from 2 set pieces this season in the Premier League. And actually, if you look at who scored stats, which take everything into account, they've actually got the 3rd best overall defensive rating. It takes into account shots allowed, tackles, interceptions, fouls, and offsides per game. This is the thing that kind of annoys me, is that there's a narrative that Spurs are horrendous at defending and all of this sort of stuff, but they actually don't allow that many opportunities. The stupid thing is those opportunities they allow, the other teams take too many of them. They're kind of, the opportunities they allow are too maybe clear cut, or they're gifts, or whatever they are. So yeah, this is what I mean. Is that there's clearly improvements to be made, but maybe it's not as major as it kind of feels amid the pain of a stupid defeat like we've just witnessed. They've got to tighten up in terms of those goals they are conceding, because they've lost 5 games in the Premier League, which is more than anyone else in the top half. That's not good enough. It's absolutely not good enough at all. And he's going to have to kind of fix this quite quickly, Postecoglou, and get the confidence levels up and the attitude right, because the schedule after this international break, it sucks. It's not a good one. It's not a good one at all. You've got Man City next straight off the bat after the international break, and this is a Man City side that is going to be absolutely smarting. We know that they lost 4 in a row. Again, is Dr. Tottenham here to see you? I don't know. I hope not. I hope that Spurs continue to be their bogey side. But City are going to be absolutely going for everything, hell for leather in this game, and that Guardiola is going to spend the next 2 weeks plotting how he can get his team back to form again. And then you've got Roma coming in the Europa League, which is up there with Spurs. Tougher games, although they've been a bit funny this season themselves. Fulham in the Premier League. Fulham can beat anyone. They're a funny team this season. Talking of sides that can beat anyone, next away day after the City away day is a trip to Bournemouth, and we've seen them beat some very good sides. Then Chelsea come to the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. That's going to be a huge match, and please not repeat of last season's. And then Spurs head up across the border to Rangers for a big, Glasgow-London clash. And it's kind of a big run of 6 games, because it comes at roughly the same time as last season. After that Chelsea game last season, when Spurs really started to stutter and stumble amid all the injuries they had. He should hopefully have Van de Ven back within these next 6 games, you would think. Richarlison and Odegaard both sound like longer-term injuries the way he talks about it, but you never know. Maybe Odegaard comes back a little bit sooner. We'll see. Again, it doesn't sound like that the way he's speaking about them. And of course, we've got Bentancur's potential ban hanging over his head as well. So it could be that he turns to younger players, maybe. We might see Mikey Moore get more chances when he's back from this virus, which I don't think has been a very good one at all. I think it's really knocked him for 6 this week. Quite a bad one he's been struggling with. So hopefully he'll be back, and this kind of couple of weeks break really allows him to recover. And the thing with viruses as well, isn't it? It's getting everything back. It's getting your energy back, and a lot of things it takes away from you. So there's Mikey Moore, whether Will Lancashire gets kind of a real kind of work done with him. I'm trying to think if he's away. I think he's actually away on international duty. I feel like he's been called up to the elite squad with England. But even that in itself can be of benefit from him if he gets on there and scores some more goals. The main one for me in terms of young players, I wonder if there's a growing temptation now to use Archie Gray in the midfield, maybe as a number 8, especially if Bentancur gets a ban, and he may be getting games as a number 6. But his technical ability is so good, his engine, his fitness, but also he's not going to want for desire and kind of attitude to try and win matches. I wonder whether this period we'll see the kind of making of Archie Gray as a midfielder. I think he's going to have to start using him. Lucas Bergvall, we spoke about in the last video, is going to need a little bit more time. I think I saw a stat that he's the youngest teenager to come straight from Sweden to the Premier League. Might have been since 2006. It's a long time. So it is a big jump for him. But you may find that over the next weeks or months or whatever, we start to see it click for him, and he just starts to feel the rhythm and the pace of the game. It could be that Jed Spence, I know he's a bit older than 24, isn't he? it could be that he gets his chance now and he gets to kind of show something a bit different. The problem for Postecoglou is that, barring Spence, they're all teenagers that I've kind of just mentioned as well. He wants to bring them through at the right pace rather than being players that he kind of has to rely on. And of course, that's a shortcoming of the recruitment policy, which he claims he initiated and wanted these young players. But of course, for us more cynical people, it does feel very much in keeping with the club's model. And I spoke in the last video about maybe feeling more like investments, like for the long term rather than players for the now. But yeah, we'll see. I know 2 of those were academy players I spoke about as well. It means the senior players that are at the club have to step up. That could be the defining factor in how good this next run of games is for Spurs. And also including, you've got the Carabao Cup final, Carabao Cup quarter final against what will be a Ruben Amorim's Man United by that point in December. Still so much to play for. This is kind of. Look, I absolutely understand the frustration with some, because the results are not good enough overall. But also, as I said, the fine margin of Spurs win today, and they're third. They're third in the quarterfinals and in a decent place in the Europa League as well. It is that wafer thin the margins. I'm not even going to go down the whole route of what if they'd not been rubbish in the second half at Brighton? What if they'd played properly at Palace? If you go into whataboutery, it can torture you. It does, and torture is Tottenham Hotspur. It is, or Tottenham Hotspur is torture. They are a very painful team to support, aren't they? They really are. I'd say in the modern era, they bring just as much sorrow as they do joy. Maybe that's football supporting. And I feel like Postecoglou right now, he's giving us glimpses of something exciting, different, while also we have days like against Ipswich where you get very painful reminders of the gloomy, inconsistent, mediocre past that there's been at Spurs. He is trying to change this mentality. Let's not forget, this is a club that has been more mediocre than marvellous for a long time. It really has. And understandably, it's not an easy process. There was no quick fix. Who knew? Spurs have had a conveyor belt of managers that are through the club. Many with holding silverware and everything they brought with them, or just holding CVs that show all of this silverware. But they've just gone in this conveyor belt through the front door and they've tumbled out the back door into like a skip. They're just like the scapegoats of subsequent failure that's come about after them, because maybe it's because they never truly get the entire club to buy into the changes that the club needs. But that's what Postecoglou is constantly calling for. And it may be among the fans. It may be the fans having to be patient. I know it's difficult because it's been so long. It's difficult for us journalists, especially like the fans. And when we're fans and journalists like myself, you're watching that kind of rubbish being served up. But yeah, it just feels like a club. Well, I've said this before, but it feels like until there's change, until things change within the club, it's always going to be less daring and less doing than they're always saying in their motto. There's a reason this defeat against Ipswich felt so familiar, because we've seen it with so many different managers. And I think now more than ever, Postecoglou has to cut through the noise, cut through the criticism, and the club have to have the bravery to kind of push through with something for once. I was thinking today about, do you remember back in September last year when Daniel Levy declared, it was only a month into Postecoglou's reign, we've got our Tottenham back. And it was incredibly premature. It was never going to be that quick. It was never going to be that easy. And to me, and I've kind of always said this, it's debatable whether do Spurs actually need anything back? Do they need their Tottenham back? What exactly is the Tottenham they're wanting to get back? Because it's a long, long time ago that there's been a Tottenham that we would like to get back. Maybe it needs something new and better, not Tottenham back. It needs something that we haven't seen before at Spurs. Especially, I don't want anything back, really, that we've seen under Daniel Levy's watch. The elements of the Pochettino years were great, but ultimately fruitless at the end of them. And let's be honest, he has switched between managers and philosophies, leaving like someone flicking through the TV channels doing that, and never really focusing on stopping and paying attention to anything. That's kind of been the whole management idea, really, at Spurs. Yet the top clubs in the Premier League in recent years have been built on stability, whether that's Guardiola and the string of titles. I know there's more to it, but stability has also played a big part. And even Jurgen Klopp, and we're now seeing Arne Slot being able to build upon the very solid foundations that Klopp laid for him. Spurs seem allergic to stability, particularly below boardroom level. That everything underneath that seems to be very, very unstable. And I know that is a trait that is common across modern football. We see change everywhere. But still, maybe Spurs should try it. The closest they've come is with a manager they allowed to work there for half a decade or so. I don't think it's any coincidence that he was the most successful manager they've had in years. Just let Postecoglou work. Let him work. Let him construct something different to what we've been served up year after year in N17. Otherwise, this kind of dreadful feeling of deja vu that we get over games like this, it's never going to go away. It's going to be the same thing that we're watching all the time, because it's almost like just kind of repeat, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. I can't go through the same mess again. I'll have to, because it's my job, and as a supporter we stick through it, don't we, regardless of how ridiculous it is. There's the hope that kills you. But I just feel that I just was really thinking about it after today's game. We've got our Tottenham back. Do I want my Tottenham back? Because my Tottenham, as far as I've known it, other than a few FA Cup wins and UEFA Cup wins when I was too young to really remember the UEFA Cup wins, and a couple of League Cup wins, and obviously we know during the Daniel Levy-Enoch era it's just the one League Cup win. Do I really want that back? The probably Tottenham I'd want back, although I was not even alive to see it, would of course be the double winning Tottenham, the Bill Nick years, the Danny Blanchflower, Dave Mackay, Cliff Jones, the kind of thing. I can't have that back because I wasn't there to witness it. So for me, and probably a lot of the people of a certain age that support Spurs, I want something new. I want something different. And I do feel like Postecoglou's got the ability to deliver that. His football, when it is working, is beautiful. It is the best football I have seen Tottenham play for a long time. When it doesn't work, it is probably among the worst football. It's not the worst. I'm sorry, there's no way that anyone that watched the Nuno matches or when the Conte ones were going wrong, when Mourinho's had no attacking kind of threat, I'm sorry, there's no way that you're saying Postecoglou football is as bad as that. It's not. It's not. But it can stink the place out. But like I say, those are those familiar deja vu matches. I believe in the other side, and I believe that the other side of the Postecoglou football is the kind of football we'll see more of when he's allowed and given time to create that. It may be that it's further changes in personnel. Maybe that the club has to back him more with ready-made players, more Solankis than kids. It could be that the kids mature and come through and it all works perfectly for him. But what it doesn't need is, let's get him out and try again with the next one. Because we've had so many of those. The odds would suggest that eventually you're going to stumble across someone that does a job. But that's not been the case for Spurs. I mean, how many managers have there been? Has Daniel Levy appointed? And how little successes there been? You could say there's been, I think someone showed me the league finishes pre-Daniel Levy and after. Yeah, they were better. But have they been truly successful? I think I said it in the last video. It's almost like I'd love a trophy, but I want Spurs to be challenging at the top. That's what I want. I want that as much as I want a trophy. And I just want someone to be able to build something at this club. And we just never feel we allow them to do it. We lose patience, myself included, and they're never allowed to go through dips. And I think maybe people will look at someone like Slot and they'll say, yeah, but look, he's coming and doing brilliantly. And not seeing the fact that he's building on Klopp's incredibly stable, great foundations, whereas Postecoglou's coming on and essentially built on a swamp. He's just kind of having to kind of build his own structure and foundation. Can you build a structure and foundation on swampland? I don't know if I've used the greatest analogy there, but he has been building on something that wasn't stable, and it's going to take more time. It is. It just is. But a lot of those stats I gave you kind of show that there has been improvement. It's just about tweaking it and getting it to the final product. But of course, in this world, results are the thing that people look at, and you have less time to get to that final product. So, another international break. You can suffer with me. Probably the next video I'll do will try and fit the old classic international break Q&A in there. So if you want to whack your questions in, please do into the comments. And we'll try and rattle through as many as we can, probably at the weekend, perhaps. Because I think, what am I doing next weekend? I'm going to watch Tottenham Hotspur women in their North London derby at the stadium against Arsenal. That would be hopefully a good game. Obviously watched the Man City game the other day and it didn't go so well, but hopefully there's a bit of a reaction to that. But yeah, other than that, yeah, let's keep ourselves busy and hope for no injuries and even, you know, whether it's someone like Solanke, just take a couple of weeks, make sure your knee's right if you want to. But yeah, so look, there's going to be a lot of kind of anger and frustration over the next 2 weeks. I understand that. I just hope that we allow something to be built at Spurs rather than just ripped up and started again. Because, like I said, I'm not suggesting that that's going to happen anytime soon. I would imagine that, you know, even Spurs surely can't have that lack of patience. That would be absolutely even ridiculous by their ridiculous standards. But I just hope that, yeah, enough time is given for all of this. Please, I want to enjoy Spurs. I feel like I kind of have more than in recent years, but they're still clearly nowhere near the finished article yet. Yeah, they need to get there probably that little bit quicker because of how modern football is and how we all are and what we demand and our long-suffering nature with Tottenham Hotspur. But there you go. That's the torture we put ourselves through. Right, time to head off because it's very late now. You'll be watching this maybe in the morning. You might be watching it later in the day, but hopefully we processed some of the emotions of an utterly terrible game. So yeah, talk to you later. As always, stay safe, stay healthy. I shall catch you later. Goodbye.